I'd like to welcome everyone for today's webinar, which is on Introduction to Various Environmental Acts Useful to Common People for Conservation Purpose. So basically today's webinar will be completely different as what we have done before, but still it will be connected to the environment. So I would like to talk something about our today's speaker. He is Dr. Rahul Mungikar. He is Assistant Director in BNHS. He's a part of policy cell of BNHS, and he has done his PhD in ecology. So he has also looked after. He has also been a part of Maharashtra State Biodiversity Board for 5 years for Biodiversity Act implementations. So I would like to further go to the introduction of BNHS. So I'm sure you all must know what is BNHS, as we have been doing so many webinars right now. Still, I would like to give you a short introduction about it. So Bombay Natural History Society has been the oldest environmental NGO in India. It has been working for the conservation of nature through research-based actions. Sir, next slide, please. Sir, next slide.
Yeah, just
Ha ha. Thank you. So here you can see Conservation Education Center, which is education wing of BNHS. We conduct nature activities here, like nature trails, nature workshops, butterfly workshop, butterfly gardening workshop, as well as we have some online hybrid courses, which we have started the admissions for online courses. So you can see the names of the courses on your screen. Sir, next slide. Thank you. So you can see the names of 5 online courses which we have started the admissions for. Leadership course in biodiversity conservation, which is 11-month course. A basic course in ornithology, which is again a 11-month course. And then there are 3 short courses as well, which is basic course in herpetology, basic course in butterfly studies, and field course in botany. So if you have any queries related to these online hybrid courses, you can write us an email, or you can contact us via Facebook as well as Instagram. So without any further ado, I would like to request sir to start with his presentation.
thank you, Priyadarshini. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome, friend. This is the as you know that my title today's title is the Introduction to Various Environmental Acts Useful to Common People for Conservation. Why we selected the subject? This is basically itself is a, big question. Uh, Everyone knows that, or everyone now they are trying to do some conservation, but very few of them they are aware about the legal options available with them. They're always trying to find out how they could protect the nature around their areas or what are the way outs, and they could not get a appropriate mechanism for that. And that's why we thought that it's better to explain how many options do we have in our hand, uh, which is purely community based, and we can approach to them or we can use some of these options wherever is possible. So this is little bit overall representation about the various options that we do have, legal options, no doubt, and how we can go ahead with the conservation with the help of these options with us. So basically, I would like to ask you a question. Just think about that. If there are some migratory birds, this is one of the situation generally happens. If the migratory birds are visiting to unprotected lake, and at the same time some people they are involved in habitat destruction activities, this activity may be intentionally or may not be intentionally. This is a general situation in many other places. Many people they are dependent on the wetlands for fishes or for bioresources from that areas, and unfortunately they are also at the same time they are destructing the habitats which is good for the migratory birds. And in such area migratory birds are coming up, but because of this disturbance you can see that this number is going ups and down. So what I can do, can we protect this such type of wetlands? And is there is my role is there in conservation of such areas? This is one question I think that we need to discuss. Another is that this is also another of an example. Some of the people they are involved in the hunting business. This hunting either it's of the scheduled species, means which are the species which are enlisted under the Wildlife Protection Act, but many species they are not under the Wildlife Act, and that might they might have some reason for that. So suppose you are getting some species like that in your area, some you know that this some person is killing some of the species. So can we ask, can we stop them by using any conservation tool? This is very tricky question whether we can do it or not. Nobody knows this answer, and that's why they are saying that how I can do that or what I can do that. Even if you report, if it is a non-scheduled species which is not reported, then it become more difficult. Like as in if there is a tiger or any species which is already enlisted or in the photographs as I showed it to you, but there is a easy mechanism because Wildlife Act is there, and under that the forest department can take action, but which is not under the Wildlife Act. How to deal with that? This is a way. So what I can do for that, and can we do something? These both questions are important in this case. One more issue is that this is one simple example, and we face this problem. This is a question to all of you. A person is collecting empty shells from the estuarine areas, whether it is a destructive activity or not. I asked this question to several people along the coastal areas also. Many people gave, I got very different answers. And the same question is to all of you also. Can we prevent such issue collection, and why to prevent? Both things are very interesting. And if you know the mechanism, how these people they are using such type of bioresources, then you will come to know that why there is a need of community-based approach for the conservation. There is no mechanism as such as in now where they can directly prevent this collection of the shells. But if they are using for the bioresources, certainly is a purpose, some commercial purpose is there, then certainly there are provisions by which the person can or anyone can restrict them. And that's why we need to understand these are the just type questions. That might be some other situations also there. After this lecture, you can ask me such type of questions. So I'll try my best to give the answers to all of them, whether how we can do with the help of the communities can do the positive thinking for the conservation of species or the landscape in their area. Generally, as title says that acts we are going to discuss with the acts. These are the general acts. These are not the exhaustive list of all acts, but some of the important acts which are related with the environment, forest, and people. So here the Indian Forest Act, which is the oldest one, Indian Wildlife Act, well-known act, Water Act is the Forest Conservation Act, Air and Environment Protection Act, which is a very important one. Then another one is the PISA Act, which is purely based with the communities. This is a Panchayat extension to the schedule area. PPBFR is also there, Biodiversity Act, Forest Right Act, and NGT Act. We are not going to discuss all these acts. This is just enlisting of some of this act. But where are the among this act, there are some of the acts is having some provisions which we can use very effectively. And as far as my understanding is there, a very few of the communities or the NGOs they use effectively the provisions available under this act. So we'll just try to take an overview of the provisions available under some of this act. So how many community-based measures we do have in our hand? For example, this is a eco-sensitive zone. Uh, I'm, I'm, I'm going to explain in details all these provisions, but just this is a enlisting. So there is an eco-sensitive area. Both these words are different. Many people, they are getting confused with the eco-sensitive zone and eco-sensitive area, but no, they are different. Like that, we have the conservation reserve, community reserve. Both these are defined under the Wildlife Act. Biodiversity heritage site, very few people they are aware about it, which is defined under the Biodiversity Act. CFRA, that is the Forest Right Act. The issue, one of the issue under this is the conservation. Similarly, the Maharashtra Regional Town Planning Act. Uh, People knows this act very well, but hardly anyone is using the tool of that for the conservation. Similarly, article under the Article 243G, the Schedule 11 of the Constitution of India, where the Panchayat Raj has got a lot of rights, and these rights can be used for the conservation purposes, because it is not specifically mentioned about the conservation, but certainly we can use the rights which is given under for the Panchayat Raj system. OECM, which is the upcoming area, also we are going to look into that. There is another is KBA, that is the key biodiversity area. Community conservation areas where there is no legal framework, but still conservation is going on. Similar, we do have the several examples of the sacred groves, the temple tanks, cattle ponds, which is described under the Schedule 11 and 12 of the Constitution of India. Also, we do have some wetland rules, and apart from that, under the Forest Department, although it is not defined under any section, but still there are some rules to form the Joint Forest Management Committee, Eco Development Committee, or Village Development Committee. The main purpose of all this is conserve the forest for the better habitat for the wildlife and near the um, overall ecosystem to that area. We'll start with the first act as an Indian Forest Act. The What is the purpose of the Indian Forest Act? It is to consolidate the law relating to forest, transit of the forest produce. This important part is the forest produce. We should know that there are many people, tribal people, also the people which are living along the forest areas, they are well dependent on the forest produce. And all this forest produce is also required to the other people also outside the forest. For example, Ayurvedic products, several forest produce is required in the Ayurvedic product. So generally, these people they are collecting the forest produce and they are sending it to the market, and from the market it goes to the people. So the conservation of all this forest produce is very important. It should be the non-destructive mechanism, and that's why that is very important. Under this act, the several definitions is given, like as in cattle, forest officer, forest offense. What does mean by the forest offense? Owner, river, timber, tree. These are the things which is well explained under this act. So those who want to understand that, they can refer this act, and basic explanation they can get it from that, how it has been defined and described under this act. Now here, what is the purpose of the act? It is making the fresh clearing, setting fire to reserve forest area, means to control that thing. Where is the keeping the carrying any fire except any such season, the forest officer may notify. Trespassing and pasture cattle, permitting cattle, all these acts actually, this type of things are prohibited under the acts. So this is a right given to the forest department, and that's why felling, girdling, lopping, blooming, all generally the people, local people, they are involved in all such type of activities, and this can be restricted by the forest department. This is the main purpose of the land. But there are some other provisions that I would like to explain. The government may assign to any village community rights of the government to over the land which has been constituted as a reserve forest. This is a very important part. And the forest can be the entire village is can be declared as a village forest. This was a concept been used in several places, even in Maharashtra, in Gadchiroli like areas. This concept is used, but not we cannot see that in the Western Ghat very well. But in eastern part of the Maharashtra, this can be observed very well. So state government can make the rules for regulation of such village forests, precise the condition under which the community involvement is very important. Under section 35 also, this is a well-known section where the state government thinks that now protection or regulation of any forest land or the wasteland is essential for soil preservation, slope, ridges, maintenance of water supply in spring, rivers. Indirectly, they are talking about the ecosystem services. But this is not a community involvement issue. This is done by the forest department. So actually here there is no involvement of the community as such. Thus government can, this is for special purpose under this act, this can be declared as an or this forest can be conserved directly by the department for the larger interest of the society. Now here uh, there is a committees like as an provision of this committee, formation of the joint forest management committee, village development committee, eco development committee. Now this is not as per the act, but this is as per the forest policy of the government. Here we need to understand that why they initiated this program. Where are the forest conflict initiated? Because in nearby areas, forest department defined the forest boundaries, and after that they realized that the people are continuously coming inside the forest and disturbing the forest areas, which is need to be protected. So to reduce this conflict in that area, see joint forest management. So forest should be managed by the people themselves. So that was the concept. Actually, area is totally belongs to the department itself, but because of the JFMC, the people got some rights to collect non-timber forest produced and other minor forest produced from that area. But at the same time, they themselves get involved in the protection of and the conservation of the forest. Now, where we can use this very effectively, I would like to give one simple example of the Baripada, which this is one village in Dulia district, which secured the first prize in 2012 under the UNDP Bada City Conservation Award. This village formed the JFMC, and that JFMC was formed in 1994. And after that, continuously they worked for more than 20 years. The entire village they changed the ecosystem services. In 1994, nothing, even the water was not available in that village. But if you visit to that village today, you will find that the village itself is providing the water to the nearby 5 different villages. So this change in the entire this ecosystem services and the bioresource management is because of the formation of the JFMC in that village. And the JFMC worked very hard and they could do it very well. Similarly, we have the another example from the same area is the Lamkani village, Lamkani, where the grassland conservation done by the local communities very well. These two are the very excellent examples where the JFMCs work very well. Other committees also more or less for the with some different objectives, but they are also main purpose is for the conservation of the forest areas into that sector. Now here, generally how we can start, generally the contact person is the local forest guard with whom we can start the dialogue, and ultimately the range forest officer or the RFO is the person who can take the further decision or the initiative in this regard. Next provision is the next important act is a Wildlife Protection Act. Everyone knows that this is one of the very important act of the forest department, which actually it's a constitution of the Wildlife Advisory Board. They are doing. They have under this act the sanctuary can be declared, of the national park can be declared. Even the Central Zoo Authority or the trade commence in wild animals, animal articles, trophies. So all for all this there are the penalties and what to do and what not to do. Everything is explained under this act. There are the schedules. So for the conservation purposes, this classified into the category schedule 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 according to the importance and the threats. So what are the species list present in the schedule 1, 2, 3, and 4? The direct there's a stringent provisions are there under this act, and this act itself is a non-bailable. So people still they are frightened with this act, and they are always saying that this act is non-bailable and the provisions are very stringent. Here this act is providing two important measures for the conservation with the help of the communities. One is called as the conservation reserves and community reserves, and this is very specific provisions under the Wildlife Protection Act. So here, these are the some of these activities. As you know that they're the prohibited activities, destroy or disturbance of the habitat, except for the permitted activities, means your permission is required even for the research. You need the proper permission to enter inside the sanctuary areas. Fire is prohibited into that area, or taking a weapon, it is banned. All such activities are banned under the Wildlife Act. Specifically, the community-based conservation, if you look at into that, this provisions is provided under the section 36A and 36C. What is the difference between the conservation reserve and community reserve? Under the conservation reserve, land should be of the forest department. Rather, the land it can be established on the forest department land only. And the consultation, forest department carries out the consultation with the local communities, and it is particularly adjacent to the national park and sanctuaries or the protected areas, so that there should not be any disturbance caused to this national park or the protected area. Here, you know that many people, since ancient time, they are living inside the forest, and because of the when we started declaration of the sanctuaries area, the area is a sanctuary. So the rehabilitation become mandatory. So they all these people rehabilitated nearby the sanctuary area. So to reduce the conflicts with the forest and the habitats. So this conservation reserve is the ultimate option for them. So with the help of the consultation with the community, so it's developing the trust with the communities, and community, if they accept the proposal, then it can be declared as an conservation reserve. Under the conservation reserve also, the communities are getting the some rights, and that's why both can they enjoy the rights and the protection conservation under this provision. The community reserve, under the community reserve, the situation is slightly different. Here, the community or the individuals has volunteered to conserve the wildlife and its habitat. So it's a other way process. So here, community should say that yes, we are interested to conserve this area, and that's why we are very much interested. Here, it is not necessary the land should be belongs to the forest department. So it's a major difference. In the conservation reserve, the area must be of the forest department, where the community reserve is not necessary. It can be any private or community land, and not comprised within the national park, sanctuary, or the conservation reserve as in conservation for the community reserve. Yeah, another important issue is about both this thing, that is conservation reserve and community reserve. There is a legal protection. Once you declared any area as either conservation reserve or the community reserve, there is a legal protection, or the backup is of the Indian Wildlife Act 1972. So in case of violation, it attracts the provision of all the Wildlife Act. So this is again, it becomes the stringent once they declared the area as in community reserve or the conservation reserve. So violation, for the violation, they do have the tool, which is the Wildlife Act tool, and by which they can control the any unwanted activities into this area. Another act, as I explained, is the Environmental Protection Act. It's a comprehensive umbrella act. There are 5 chapters and 26 sections, and puts a deterrent control where the polluters of the environment by making liable to the penal action. This is under this act, the policy adopted that polluters to pay the victims of the environmental pollution and also cost to restore the disturbed ecology and environment. This act gives the ample power to the central government to take the measures necessary environment protection and improvement of the environment. So if you look at the Article 48 A of the Constitution, or the 51 1G of the Constitution, uh, based on this, the Environment Protection Act, actually the fundamental duties will mention under this Article 51. So this act is based on that principle. Now, under this act, there are two major issues or the two major options been given, or the government also use already that two options, that is the ESZ and ESA for the protection of the larger areas. I just, before explaining to that, I would like to explain or just will go through that how many different rules are there, why this act is called as an umbrella act. The major is the Environment Protection Rules 1986, which is amended recently 2019. But there are several other rules like the hazardous, biomedical, and persistent organic pollutant. So if anyone thinks that there is a um, some issues are coming up because of the biomedical waste or the pollutants and all these things, so they can refer the rules which is given under the EPA acts. So e-waste also now is upcoming, the lot of e-waste is generating, and for that the separate rules are there under that. So here, one more important rule is given is a wetland conservation and management rule. We recently amended 2017, because previously these rules were of 2010, but now the 2017 rules are there. So wetland protection and conservation, the every state now they have their wetland authority, and now state is looking after the some of these wetlands, how they can be conserved or preserved for the biodiversity point of view, and they are this under the wetlands. So all wetlands cannot be declared as an Ramsar site, which is of the international status, but at local level these wetland rules are providing the important tools for the conservation. Now there is a criteria, so if that wetland is matching to the criteria, then so certainly the community can approach to the wetland authorities for the conservation of that wetland. But this is not only the option for the conservation of wetlands. We'll just see how many other options are available with us. Under the Environment Protection Act, if it's a very large area, complex ecosystem as integrated with the human settlements are there, this entire area can be declared as an eco-sensitive area. Everyone might be aware about that. We have the Western Ghat eco-sensitive area, and there is a committee, or the specialized committee was appointed by the Supreme Court. Also, first committee was under the chairmanship of Dr. Madhav Gadge, and second committee was constituted under the chairmanship of Dr. Kasturi Rangan, K. Kasturi Rangan. And now the report submitted by Dr. Kasturi Rangan has been accepted by the central government, and this entire Western Ghat, which is traverse to the 6 states, is declared as an eco-sensitive area. So the report of the Kasturangan committee is available online, and anyone can go through that report. So they have given the criteria, how they define the this Western Ghat, and what are the criteria for considering it as an ecological sensitive area. So they explain the threats and the diversity present to that area, ecosystem services available to the people, everything, and why we need to conserve this area, or why this area is called as a sensitive area. So government under the so many NGOs also pressurized, they sent a letters to the government and asked them, okay, why you are not declaring this area as a sensitive area. And now this is ultimate the result of that overall activity, and now that declaration of the eco-sensitive area is under the process. Another area is ecological fragile area. Sometimes area may not be very large. It might be the just like as in one town, or the is as compared to the entire Western Ghat, it may be of the block like areas, and they are very ecologically fragile and sensitive. So endemism like characteristic is very high to that area. You take an example of the plateau tops of the Pashgani, or plateau tops in the Satara districts, where the hundreds of or lakhs of people they are now visiting just to see the threatened plants present to that area. So such as the fragile areas can be declared as an eco-sensitive zone. Now, there is a guideline already published by the Ministry of Environment. So those are interested, they can go through the guidelines, which is available on Ministry's website, also available on net everywhere. So this guidelines says that how area, or what are the criteria by which we consider that this area is the ecological fragile area, and why it should be conserved. So if such area is need to be conserved immediately, or there is a lot of threat if it is there, then government can declare this area as an ecological sensitive zone. In Maharashtra, we have the three zones, like as in Mahabaleshwar, Pasgani is one of the ecological sensitive zone. Another one is the Mathiran, and third one is the Dahanu. But apart from that, there are several other ecosensitive zones are there, and in India also, these zones are declared under this act by the Ministry of Environment. How we can use this opportunity? So now many areas, wherever they actually, it contains the forest areas also, community areas also, some river like areas also, which is the part of the town, and so on. So in that case, the provisions for the ecological sensitive zone can be used very effectively. For that, we need to do the lot of studies that why this area is fragile and ecologically important, and the report need to be submitted to the respective authority, so that they can think over that, and they can take appropriate action in this regard. Nowadays, in 2002, actually the Biological Diversity Act came into force, and now it's a major tool to the non-protected area. Till now, we looked into the acts which are actually governed by the Forest Department or the Environment Department. But Biodiversity Act, it is not under the Forest Department. It is the act of the Panchayat Raj system, and every village or the gram panchayat, they have the unit called as the biodiversity management committee. They are empowered with the certain provisions which is given under this act. So main purpose of this act is conservation and development of areas important standpoint of biological diversity. We can declare this area as an heritage site. There is a provision for the protection and rehabilitation of threatened species, and the involvement of the institution of state government in the broad scheme of implementation of this act through the constitution of the committees. That committee means Biological Diversity Committee. So this committee is supposed to be at every local body level. Remember, local body means the gram panchayat. It starts from the gram panchayat. Above through that, at block level, there is a Tahsil committee. At Jilla Parishad level in Maharashtra, we have the Jilla Parishad. But Panchayat Raj, where the Panchayat Raj department is there, the at district level, the Panchayat Raj is under the system. That district level committee should be there. Where the election of the local body is taking place, at all these places, this committee is needs to be established. So purpose is for the promoting conservation, sustainable use, and documentation of biodiversity. Here, documentation, this part I would like to praise this word documentation, and I'll explain these terms in detail also. Here, the biodiversity committee can levy the charge by the way of collections fees. So if somebody is coming collecting any species or the samples from any village, so these committees actually have they are empowered to collect the fees. Now, fee actually it is not very high, but it's a nominal. But why they make a provision? Because the villagers actually are the guardians of the biodiversity to that area, and it is expected that the villagers should take interest for the protection of the biodiversity present to that. It's a big tool available everyone. It's not only for the gram panchayat, but it is for every municipal council. This committee is also there in municipal corporation. This committee is there. So but very few of us are aware about that, how the biodiversity management committees functions and who are the members. Generally, we are not becoming the members of this committee, and that's why most many committees at present they are non-functional on the ground. Here, section 7 is for the biosurvey and any there's a provision. I'm not going section by section, only this section I'm explaining. This is applicable only for the Indians. Suppose we are the Indians and we are interested to collect any bioresource for commercial purposes. I'm talking specifically of the commercial purposes. So I want to make some medicine out of that and I want to sell it out to the market. Then under this act, the prior permission is required if we are going to collect anything for the commercial purposes. Remember, but if it's a Vaidu or the local Hakim, if they are doing or doing some collection from their area, so they are exempted. So local people, they are exempted. But whatever the bioresources are going out of a village, it is mandatory to the committee to put it everything on paper. Unfortunately, people, they are not doing that. So, and that's why we are losing a biodiversity with a rampant rate. So this is very important tool. Actually, all non-protected area is covered under the Biological Diversity Act, because this act is in addition to the existing act and not in derogation with the existing act. So forest department, if you look at the area of the forest department, in total, the 24% land is with the forest department, but rest of the, like 75% area is non-protected area. And this area, the biodiversity management committee can play a very vital role, and it is already defined in the preamble of this act also, the conservation of the biodiversity and access and benefit sharing of the benefits arising out of the utilization, commercial utilization of the bioresources. So these are the principles accepted as it is from the Convention on the Biological Diversity. So this act is very important. And what are the other provisions which makes this act significant to all of us? There is a provision called as a People's Biodiversity Register. Now most of you might have heard about this PBR concept, because recently the Supreme Court gave a verdict that every state should complete the PBR by the end of the February, and they should submit the PBR to the state biodiversity board. Now because of that, all the states started doing this PPR on the large scale. Uh, Many at places they did it well, but many places they just tried to enlist the species present to their area. What is the main purpose of the PPR? PPR is People's Biodiversity Information. Here, main purpose is to document the traditional knowledge of local people associated with the biodiversity and its utilization. It is very important, because if you look at the patents which is coming up in the international market or national markets, so patent based on the medicinal plants, from where they are taking out this information. So it revealed that this information are coming from the traditional knowledge. So people actually, they are trying to get the traditional knowledge from the people. They are adding their own knowledge to that, and they are developing the patterns. So this type of knowledge is conserved by the local people, but they are not getting the benefit of their own traditional knowledge. And so secure their traditional knowledge to create the rights of about their traditional knowledge on their name itself. This PBR is very important. Another important part is that the conservation methodology. The local people, they are already involved in the conservation practices, but we are not aware about that. So it is also expected that how the conservation practices they are following. So all such practices also needs to be documented under the PBR. So PBR is in a way, it's a confidential document, is rights or the intellectual property right of the local people, and that's why it is a confidential one. And this the by understanding of the proper understanding of the PBR, the people can conserve the biodiversity in their own jurisdiction or the village jurisdiction. So every biodiversity management committee is empowered for the conservation of the biodiversity from their own areas. So it's a major tool available for the community-based conservation. So apart from that, there is a concept is given biodiversity heritage site under the section 37. Like then the areas which is unprotected, which is not covered under the Wildlife Act, which is not covered under the protected area, but still this area is famous for particular type of species. It may be endemic or endangered, but this is not very large area, very small area. Like as I take an example of the Gadchiroli, we have the Maharashtra have the first, it's a biodiversity heritage site is a Glory of Alapalli. Now this Glory of Alapalli is famous for the teak plant. Now this teak plant, the total perimeter of that plant is more than 8 meters, 6 meters, sorry. So very large type of teak plants. It's called as the world number one teak wood is available under this Alapalli forest. So this area is declared as an heritage site. So it's a real heritage to us. Similarly, there might be some areas where such type of heritage is available, like is in Pune itself. There's a one garden inside the agricultural college. It's called. It is from the Peshwa's time, and that called as there are some trees. They are still there, which was since last 200 years, and that is called as Peshwa's mango. So such area is our traditional resource, and that's why this type of areas can be conserved under the name of the biodiversity heritage site. So there is a mechanism, no doubt. We need to again through the committee, the proposal needs to be developed. But this Biodiversity Act and the Biodiversity Management Committee is providing the unique tool for the conservation of such heritage site for us. And nowadays, many organizations or the communities or the people, NGOs are also working for that. So there is a criteria is well defined. There's a guidelines is issued by the National Biodiversity Authority. So unique ecologically fragile areas, richness in wild, high endemism, several factors are there. Only we need to make the reports according to on this format. Uh, Now, as I said that there's a Panchayat Raj system. This is another act under the Panchayat Raj system. Name itself is a Forest Right Act, but this act is not under the Forest Department. This has to be implemented through the Panchayat Raj system. And Forest Right Act, somehow there are different opinions, but no doubt this is the right. Under this act, the rights has been given back to the communities. Those are the forest dwelling scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers. Now, other traditional forest dwellers, they are also included under this act. There are two types of right. One is called as the community-based right, and second one is the individual rights. I'm not talking about the individual rights because individual rights, the provisions are a bit different. But community rights, the one of the part is they actually the rights are given for the bioresources, but simultaneously it is expected that they should do the sustainable utilization of the bioresources and the conservation of the biodiversity to that area, without which they cannot get sustainable production of the non-timber forest produce from their area. So community, this community, now this is a specialized community, which is the forest dependent community. So this community is getting this right for the conservation. So NGOs, many NGOs, those are working in this regard. They are actually fighting because it has been observed that the communities which are nearby the forest area, they do not know how to work with those things. But this actively engaged NGOs, they are explaining to these people, to the community, to get their rights and how to go ahead for the sustainable development into that area. So this is a Biodiversity Act and the FRA. The unique provisions are available under this act. Uh, another in urban areas, many people they ask the question that in urban areas how the conservation can be done. So here MRTP Act, it's specifically for the town planning. Uh, but here the provision under the section 20, it is there, the urban development plan where they are developing. Actually, they are reserving some of the pockets for the conservation purposes, like as in even the regional development plan under the section 22, this provision is there. So all the developmental plan for the urban area, it should be revised at least once in a 20 year. This is at least, so it can be multiple times. But nowadays, people they are doing it once in a 20 years because it's a very large exercise. And like that, recently in Satara area, the government has came up with the ecological area. They defined these areas are the ecological fragile area and has should be conserved irrespective of its ownership. it is we need to take a note of that. It is irrespective of the ownership, whether it is with the forest department or the private areas, but they have considered that these areas are the pockets where they are very fragile and ecologically well important. Similarly, hills around the city in Pune also this resolution passed. At least the 4% of the hills which is there around the Pune city, the area must be conserved and no construction should be allowed to that. So this mechanism is introduced, or this provision is there under the urban areas. But this which areas to be conserved, the local people needs to put their say when there is a declaration of the plan is there. Generally, it happens that whenever the government starts revising any regional development plan or development plan, they always ask the communities or the people to share their views or the suggestions for that. So during that time, we can use under these provisions, we can specifically suggest the government for the conservation of some of the important areas in the urban section, like that. And the in village level conservation provisions, under the village, or as I already explained, some of the villages are the forest areas, some of the villages they are already situated nearby the forest areas where the JFMC can be worked. But apart from that, several villages they are not nearby to the forest areas. So how, what are the mechanisms available with them? Now here, I would like to pay attention towards the Article 243 of G, which provides the powers and authority and responsibility of the panchayat to function as an institution of self-government. Some of the villages they use the powers very wisely, and they decided that yes, we want our village as an ecological important village, or we'll make our village as a green village. So under this power is already given. Now there are several powers, you will find all those powers is given under the scheduled 11 of the Constitution of India. So for example, I just mentioned minor irrigation, water management, watershed development, fisheries, minus forest produce. All these powers is already given to the Panchayat Raj, self government. Now here, this self government under this, if they decide, okay, we want to conserve our small lake for the particular purposes, and if they pass a resolution at a Gram Panchayat level, then certainly community have the rights to do the any interesting thing beneficial to them for the conservation of the nature. Some of the villages they use this provision very wisely, but unfortunately, number of Gram Panchayat are still not using the powers is given to them. So almost I'm at the end of the now my presentation. That's as I said that community-based conservation, but there is another issue: the species-based conservation is also there. If you look at the Biodiversity Act, the section, the function of under the section 7, where the permission is required, but function of the BMC, if you look at that, so under the function of BMC, the BMC have the rights to say yes or no to the certain activities if they are taking place in the village area. So they can ask any person if they are disturbing some habitats in their villages. Like I said, now we know that the schedule 1 to 4 it is there under the Wildlife Act, but now under the Biological Diversity Act also there's a separate list which are of the species which is not covered on the Wildlife Act. So all such species can be declared as a threatened species under the Biodiversity Act, but only thing is that this list is state wise, so every state needs to declare their own list separately, and these lists are available on their website and also on the website of the National Biodiversity Authority. So those the species which are included under the Wildlife Act, the provisions are there, and the forest guard or the RFO is the concerned person who can take action for that. The Tree Felling Act is also there, but I'm not focusing on the Tree Felling Act very much, where the conservation of certain species can be done under this act also. Uh, Last part is where the legal provisions are not there. Now we discuss about the legal provision, like as in community conservation area. There is no legal protection as such, but it is decided by the community and they are managing themselves. So they have their own rules and regulations, and some of the CCS they already passed the resolution accordingly through their gram panchayat. So this is the declaration and maintenance by the community for the sustainable development. This is several examples are there, but in eastern part of the India, we can see the several CCS are present. Like that, this OECM is an upcoming issue. It's not been declared any OECM in India, but it is other effective area-based conservation measures, which is proposed by the IUCN. Now here, what we accepted is that any area which is ecological important or the biodiversity point of it is important, that also can be declared without considering its ownership as an OECM. But only thing is that there will not be the legal status, but it is just as an name that this is a designation to that area. This is the OECM. So in future, the government can think about provide legal measures for the protection of that such areas. So we have the sacred groves like that, the community conserve area, tanks are there. Other key biodiversity areas are also there. So one of the case study just would like to explain which the BNHS has done. Here the IBA, that is the important bird areas. In important bird areas, if you look at that, we have the more than 554 areas, and out of that, 40% are in the non-protected areas. So these important bird areas, it is throughout India, the categorized by the BNHS, and 40% the areas are the outside the protected areas. And how we can protect this non-protected IBS? So this is the question, and here the OECM is the one of the options now we do have in our hand. But at the same time, as I said, that this is the Biodiversity Act where we can declare this is an heritage site also, and the government also can consider for the community-based conservation of those areas. The way out for the KBAs in non-protected areas, because KBA is a international criteria. Remember, it is not a local criteria, but international criteria. So those areas or those important bird areas, which is meeting or matching with the criteria of the key biodiversity area proposed by the BirdLife International and IUCN. So these areas can be declared as an KBA also. But here also the local for the management of this KBA, the community involvement is again very important. And so wherever the wetland and such type of things are there, these two things are very or we can consider for the protection of these very large wetlands as an KBA. OECM, we have the forts across the Western Ghat, approximately 200 forts are there, which can be declared as an OECM. Sacred groves are there, private forest patches are there, wetland supporting migratory species not under the wetland rules are there, biological rich marine areas studied by the IUCN. So some of the examples, this can be declared as an other effective area-based conservation measures, which is the upcoming tool where the designation is important, not the legal dimensions. Last summary, just would like to put like if we have the how we can use the provisions effectively. If the landscape conservation large area is there, then we can go for the ESA like provisions. If the conservation ecological fragile area, then we can think for the ESZ, but comparatively small areas. If the area is adjoining to protected area or inside the forest, then we can think for the conservation reserve or community reserve. If the area is unprotected but it's a biodiversity reach, then we can go ahead with the BHS under the BD Act. Area is small but ecologically important, then we can think for the OECM or the conservation community conservation area. Here area is variable, it's not necessary it should be small, it can be large, but community protection is very important. And if the species based conservation is there, we already have the provision on the this wildlife act, but nowadays we can also go for the provisions of the BD Act for the unscheduled species, and which is defined under the BD Act as a threatened species. And this is my last slide. even after doing all these things, if we realize that there are some issues are there, the cognizance is not taken by the government and other things. So we have the major tool as a National Green Tribunal Act 2010. So under this act, we can, this is based on the CBD Convention and Stockholm Convention, and this is the jurisdiction is to entertain all types of environmental related disputes, which is covered under the Section 14. It's a major tool provided to all the environmentalists and conservationists. So you can approach to the NGT in any case of this uh, any case of damage to the environment or destruction or the habitat loss, so and so on, because the bench of the NGT is comprised of the two judges, and one of the judge is always an expert person, and that's why NGT Act is a powerful tool is to all the NGOs and the conservationists, and they can use it very wisely. So this is, I think that this is most of the part I have covered. No doubt this is a legal part is too much a legal part is there, but these are the tools and you can explore all these tools, and you can do the conservation in better way. In any case of need, any case of help you need from me or from the BNHS, we are ready to provide. I'm very much thankful to you and thankful to the CEC for giving this opportunity to me for this presentation. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul sir. Thank you so much for such a enlightening presentation. So right now we have many questions in the chat section. So I will read one question for you, and you can answer the queries.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, sir. So first question is how the boundaries or extent of ESZ around protected areas get decided.
Okay, ESZ, it is an eco-sensitive zone. If you consider, generally the government when they are making the planning for the ESZ, they are actually going with the GIS studies and the effective area for the conservation. So this based on the effective area of conservation, like as I take an example of the Mahabaleshwar and Pasgani. If you look at the Mahabaleshwar Pasgani, this it's not only the Mahabaleshwar, but Pasgani is also included, and also the 40 other villages in the nearby that Tapola area. This entire area is covered under that. So it is almost entire block is covered under the eco-sensitive zone. So whereas in case of Mathiran, the only the Mathiran part is included, which is at the on the hill as such. So it depends on that effective area of that entire area, and so the government always take do this GIS studies, or they are asked to organizations to do this type of studies, and based on that they can decide that what is the appropriate boundaries for this ESZ.
Okay, sir. Thank you for the answer. I will read the second question. Is there any study done for declaration of flamingo sanctuary in Mumbai near Thani Creek? Where can I find it?
Okay, you can actually this process is going on for the sanctuary declaration, but the all the proposals are with the department only. I think that it's better way you can contact with the BNHS, our conservation cell. They can explain you very well what is the status, and also the forest department people can explain it. Generally, whenever they are sending a proposal, you can't see the proposal directly online as such, but we can get that information from the forest department. If they if could not get it, that you can also file the right to information act, what is the status, and so on and so on. So based on that we can get that more information about it.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So next question is any written material available for these wildlife acts?
Yeah, sure. The lot of material is available. Actually, I explained it very in simple language. Otherwise, you will get act. All these acts are available. Explanation of the act is also available, and the case studies under this act, because there are different sections are there. So from based on each part, a lot of material is available directly online. So you can just search it on Google itself. You will get all this material, and they are freely downloadable also.
Amazing. That's a great idea. Thank you, sir, for this answer. I will read the next question. Is the People's Biodiversity Register publicly available?
Oh, it's a very nice question. Actually, as I said that this people biodiversity register is itself is a confidential document. It is not supposed to available online because it involves the intellectual property right act of the local people, and that is specifically about their traditional knowledge related to the biodiversity present to their areas. This traditional knowledge is patentable, remember, and that is why many people they try to get a patent based on the traditional knowledge itself, specifically the medicines, application of the medicine, preparation of the drugs, medicinal, some of the properties. Many vaidus they knows, I know some of the case studies, but as an constraint of the time I can't explain all of them. But based on their the vaidus, generally when we are taking the interviews of the Vaidu will explain something. So based on the people, they are taking out that okay, this is the plant they are using, and then they are doing their own experiments and making the patent out of that. So this is what it's a what extracting the knowledge from the people and patenting on their own name. So that's why it is not allowed. Rather, to protect their traditional knowledge, the PBR is supposed to be done. So it's creating rights in their name. So it is not supposed to available online directly. Unfortunately, some of the people they made this knowledge very publicly, but the act itself, or sorry, in the rules and guidelines will mention that this PBR is a confidential document and no one should disclose the information given under the PBR.
Okay, sir. So actually, we have lot of questions here, but due to constraint of time, I will take this last question, and then we can end with the session. Is it okay?
Yeah, yeah, okay.
So last question, I will read it. Why are we still following pre-independence Indian Forest Act 1927?
Very nice question. This is name is a 1927. Remember, it's not all the rules and regulation of 1927. Generally, acts we are following the several acts are there, which are defined as a 1972 Act, Wildlife Act. The act first time it was defined in 1972, so the 1972 remain as it is. But several amendment has been done time to time, and we are using the amended act. So whenever the amendment we are doing the amendment, we need to look at it to the amendment amended act. And so all the provisions they are not from of the 1927. So we are using the whatever the recent amendment has been done by the Constitution of India, the supreme authority or the parliament. So the department is following that things. So several things are there which is in the 1927 act, but they are not there now. There's some new also came up, and accordingly the act has been designed. Yes.
Rahul
Thank
sir.
you, sir. हाँ
Yes, sir.
प्रियदर्शनी
हाँ सर.
प्रियदर्शनी
हाँ sir. Yes,
just
I
wait.
can hear you.
Rahul sir, yeah, Rahul sir, if you take more questions, is it okay?
Yeah, no problem. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay,
Okay, sir.
Priyadarshini, take more questions. There are a lot of questions. Take
Yes, sir.
five more minutes we
Definitely.
can take. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Fine.
There are some good questions.
Okay, sir. Sure. So I will
Yeah,
read the
take.
next. Yes, sir. Okay. So I will read the next questions. So, what is your analysis of new draft EIA notification 2020 and its impact on community conservation?
Okay, EIA 2020, no doubt, it's a now they are trying to dilute that act, and it's a post facto. The term used as an post facto, by which it's giving the more chance to the builders and other things, so that they can start initiate the work, and then the investigation can be done. So as far as the conservation is concerned, it's a threat to that, and the new amendment or the proposed things are, it's not that good for the conservation point of view. So 2006 issues are, they are actually more important, and they are, as compared to the this new amendment, they are very good. So everyone should write to the government in this regard, because now that they asked their comments from the communities also, from the people also, and from the institution also. So we are giving our comments, no doubt. So you can also share your comments. So this act is trying to dilute the existing provision of the environment impact assessment, and so it will create more threat to the ecological sensitive areas and the forest areas in India.
Okay, sir. Thank you for the answer. I will read the next question. So actually, this one is how we can protect 75% of unprotected wildlife in India, or can be preserved along with development.
It's a good question. Basically, wildlife, when we are saying it, the wildlife, the most of the species of the wildlife, they are already included under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. So species itself has got a protection. So under the act, no one can kill the species. But as the question is that how we can conserve the 74%, means that we are talking about the habitat conservation. Species conservation, for that already act is available, but we need to think more about the habitat conservation. As I said that till 2002, there was no tool available for the common people to conserve or mark as an area for the conservation purposes. But now Biological Diversity Act is providing that tool. But our committees, which are Biodiversity Management Committee, they are not taking the cognizance of the rights given to them. There is no need to go anywhere. Every village have their own jurisdiction. So gram panchayat, they have their own jurisdiction. So every gram panchayat should think about for the conservation of the biodiversity present in their jurisdiction. It's a very small thing, but if they start like that, if they start working in that way, certainly we may able to achieve the conservation in very large area. So there is no need to have the district level body or the state level body as such. But the rights has been given to the local committee, and at present, the local committees are non-functional. So we need to make these local committees functional as much as possible. If we could do that, we can use the better provisions of the Biodiversity Act itself. Under the Biodiversity Act, the member secretary, he is not a member secretary. The secretary is the, in Maharashtra, he is a gram sevak. In some of the state, the person is a different person, but the more or less the structure remains the same. But the committee do not have the right to file a case. So committee has to report to the RFO, because RFO is the designated officer under the BD Act who can take a complaint, who can register a complaint or the FIR under the BD Act. Because this act is also having the stringent provisions, same as that of the this Wildlife Act. This act is also non-bailable. Under the Forest Act, if somebody do some violation, the fine is hardly 500 to 2000 maximum. But at the same time, under the Biodiversity Act, if you book the same violation under the Biodiversity Act, that fine becomes the 1 lakh rupees, minimum 1 lakh rupees. This is the major difference. Under the Forest Act, this is the bailable act, whereas under the Biodiversity Act, this is a non-bailable act. So cognizance level is changed tremendously. So this much powerful tool is given to the people, but community is not using that. That is the unfortunate thing. So if we want to go for the very larger area, unprotected area, start using the provisions of the Biodiversity Act wisely, and it will give the, or it will give the very positive impact in rest of the areas.
Okay, sir. Thank you for the answer. So I will take this as a last question. And this is actually a big question, so I will read it out. I handed over a wounded peafowl to forest persons. They said we have done Panchnama and will give you a copy, but they never gave the copy or any feedback. When I asked, they said that the that the peafowl it escaped in the same habitat, but he thinks ki dog bites are so severe that it is not possible. So what should be done for this?
Okay, so here actually Panchanama have my some more details is required to give the proper answer, but just I'm assuming something and based on that I'm giving the answer. For example, whenever they did the Panchanama, you can ask for the copy. If they are not given, you can write under the RTI. You directly put this question, because many a time it happened that the forest guard are reluctant or the RFO is reluctant to give the copy. So you can ask for that copy. What exactly they have mentioned under this the Panchanama, and what was the situation. Also, generally before releasing any species, they need a doctor's certificate that the species which is wounded, it is now safe and they can go back. So veterinary doctor whosoever is there, you can ask him also regarding the what was the status and how they have they consulted with you, so and so on. So regarding that, taking that in next part is that in captivism during that recovery period, where they kept that animal, whether it was in the actually the provisions are there everywhere where they're supposed to keep it there. So how many days they keep like that. So all such type of questions you can put it in the RTI also, and you can discuss, and based on that you can decide. But if they are not ready to give you answer, the better way is you write a RTI, and through the RTI, only thing is that under the RTI you need to write very precise question, like as that whether they this information in document form available, yes or no. They are not supposed to do any research work, remember. So whether the Panchanama available, yes or no, get a copy, yes, that's only thing. So they will give you the copy of that Panchanama. So sort of things. So you need to understand how the RTI also works. So people they are saying me that RTI we put RTI, but they are keep sending the question back to us, and they are saying that this is information not available, so and so on. So you need to use some skill set to design a question in RTI. But through the RTI you can get the proper information. Then and then you can decide what to do with that, because otherwise if it is very seriously injured, and if you have some photographs, like then the dog bite is very deeply the teeth are deeply there inside their legs or somewhere wherever it is bitten. So in that case you can show the photographs also, that this was the situation, how could it get recovered in 4 days, 5 days. So sort of things, cross question things you can do. And if after that if nothing could happen, then as I said, it's well mentioned in my presentation also, you can approach to the NGT with all the efforts that you made. You put in front of the NGT. NGT will first listen your case, and they will decide whether to enter in the case or not. If they think that this case is to be entertained, then immediately they will issue a notice to the that respective forest officer, and they will ask to submit a that his say in this regard.
Thank you so much, sir, for the answers. I'm sure they all have many questions, but right now we have a time constraint here. So we will end the session in some time. I would like to thank you, sir, for such an informative session on environmental acts. So we usually, as common people, we don't know what to do with our, knowledge, lack of knowledge, or what we can do for our environment. So you actually gave us a very good insight about the environmental act. So thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining the session and for attending the session. So I would like to request the host to conclude the session now.